Russians are really, at least historically, very, very good mathematicians, very, very good physicists. Like, they had a different way of teaching over there, especially during the Soviet era. And so there was this kind of like ongoing thing where there's the Soviet bloc where they have all of their mathematicians and physicists doing their own thing and they're publishing in Russian. And then there was everybody else who's, at least after about the 1930s or so, publishing in English. Everybody else in the world, in Japan and France and Germany and the United States, everybody's publishing in English. So there's not really a whole lot of crosstalk either, because, there's Soviets and then there's non-Soviets. And so, like, there's politics involved, of course.
Yeah.
And it's not like that you would submit your English paper to a Russian journal, and a Russian mathematician who only speaks Russian wouldn't submit their paper to an English-speaking journal. So there wasn't a lot of crossover. And you have to remember that before the 1990s even, these journals were physical pieces of paper. And so there was an iron curtain up, right? This means that if you wanted to get the journals, like even if you spoke Russian and you wanted to read the Russian journal, you had to find somebody from the USSR who could give you it. Because it's just how else were you supposed to get it, right? So what ended up happening is you have a whole bunch of known results in the English speaking community. It's kind of like the lore of the physics and math community where, these are known results. And then, there's some open questions that haven't been solved. There's some problems that, are active areas of research. And then it turns out that had you been omniscient and been able to read the Russian papers and the English papers, turns out that the Russians solved the English problem. And so what ends up happening quite a lot, especially after, the Soviet Union fell and after the development of the internet and stuff, there's so much extra information that just wasn't part of like the compendium of known knowledge in math and physics in the English speaking world. In fact, there was even a joke about this on The Big Bang Theory in like one of their later episodes where the main character Sheldon and his wife Amy, they have this theory and then they discover after doing a literature review that there was a Russian who published something about it and proved it wrong in the 1970s. Like, this isn't even just an American thing. I was talking to my supervisor here, and he said that something that he heard once is the easiest way to get a master's degree in mathematics is to learn Russian and then translate a Russian paper and pass it off as your own. because nobody does that. Nobody has the results. Luckily enough, the result that I needed for this project I was working on, it was published by a Russian a Russian physicist, actually. But I only found out about it because I was asking people, and my former supervisor happened to know about it. He happened to know about this obscure Russian result. Since, the last 30 years or so actually isn't so obscure anymore because it's like remarkably useful. But it is one of these things where like it wasn't really talked about in the English speaking world until the 90s, I guess. So it's just a very strange thing that geopolitics comes into play here.